who makes the rules for a profession is a very, very vexed question. And as I've suggested, there seems to be a trend amongst this government for them to take regulatory control of professions and then exercise all sorts of weird rules over them. One such profession that is under the gun, and we've covered this because I think it is important this week, is the law profession. And the Law Society has come up with a report, which it calls an independent report, but of course it's not. That's bullshit. It's a Law Society report commissioned by the Law Society, which means it can't be independent, which says, oh, dear Law Society, you should stop being the regulatory body for lawyers. You should be like their union now. And we should give all the power to regulate lawyers or run the disciplinary process for lawyers. We should give that to some government body. And that government body shouldn't forget about the very important principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, even though we're not sure what they are. Well, this has caused some concern amongst lawyers. And one of the lawyers that it caused concern amongst, well, his name was Stuart Smith. He also happens to be a National MP, and he wrote an article about it. And he joins us on the line now. Stuart, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, thanks, Sean. I'm just reeling from the fact that I'm actually not a lawyer.
Oh, you're not a lawyer? You just wrote the article?
I'm not a lawyer. I just wrote the article, yes. Because
I thought you must have been, because they've come back and told you off, the Law Society, haven't they, about your article?
Well, yes, I've had... They came back and said, well, that I'd said it was a statutory duty that they were going to be required, and that it was an independent body, not the Law Society. But in your intro, I think you covered the independence issue about that panel. But
yeah.
Yes, it is a regulator that would be required to give effect to the treaty, or to,
which would have an effect on the way that lawyers behaved, because they would then face discipline if they didn't uphold the principles of the treaty, if their regulator was working to the principles of the treaty. Stuart, sorry, I had thought you were a lawyer. I just, so many politicians are. My apologies for the insult. But Stuart, why?
It's not an insult, Sean. I came from the wine industry.
Yeah, so okay, we'll see.
A much more laudably profession.
Yeah. Stuart, why did you feel moved to write about this Law Society report and change?
Because a lot of the peak bodies for industries have really lost the room. They have forgotten who they are there to serve. And I think the best example of that is the groundswell movement in the agricultural sector, where the groundswell members felt that the peak bodies were not representing them.
Like fed farmers.
In fact, yes, and beef and lamb and so on. Now, fed farmers and beef and lamb have, I think they've completely changed the way they are operating now, and they've got back.
I think Groundswell. I think you're right. Groundswell has kind of if you like, been a conscience for those pre-existing organisations that were perhaps falling into a comfortable symbiosis with Greenies and government that wasn't really expressing the frustration many farmers were feeling.
Yes, and absolutely, and I think that this move by the independent body of the appointed by the independent panel appointed by the Law Society reflects exactly the same sort of position that Groundswell were fighting against. That I think they've forgotten what the law is all about. It's about us all being able to be represented fairly and having a lawyer actually represent their client rather than trying to adhere to something else. It would be very strange to have people to have to give effect to the New Testament of the Bible, for example.
Yes, good point.
And so what's different about the treaty?
Look, of course, the argument they always come back with, Stuart, look, it's just in there for reasons it doesn't really mean anything or matter or anything. My comeback to that always is, well, why not take it out then?
Oh, I think it does mean something because actually this is it's actually sneaking in bit by bit, and before you know it, it's so entrenched within all the organisations that they've haven't done it in one step, they've done it in 1,000, but they've got there with entrenching these sorts of requirements, which will have a real chilling effect on the freedom of people to hold opinions, publicly anyway, and to act in a way that might be in the best interest, in this case, of their client.
Yeah. Well, Stuart, if you were concerned about that, about the lawyers, not being a lawyer yourself, but being just, what a great profession being in the wine industry. Are you guys regulated by the government? I suppose you are in some ways, alcohol is. But you must have been really concerned then when you saw what came out of the Department of Internal Affairs yesterday afternoon.
I'm not. I've been busy yesterday. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Okay, so there is now a new proposal from the Department of Internal Affairs, obviously asked to do so by the government of the day, that because the internet is such a confusing and dangerous thing, there is a new censorship regulator established by the government that will have a code of conduct that will, of course, be operated in accordance with the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi that will regulate all media in New Zealand. And anyone with over 25,000 subscribers on any sort of social media here or overseas. And there will be a code of conduct that you will compulsorily have to abide by, or you may be disciplined by the regulator.
I did see a reference to that, but I wasn't across the details.
Get into it, Stuart. If you think what's happening with the Law Society is wacky, this will blow your head off.
It's certainly... There's a move around the Western world to control speech. Hate speech, mis and disinformation is all code for censorship.
Stuart, is the National Party committed to rolling this rubbish back or not? Because I'll be brutally frank, many people wonder when they look at Chris Luxon, who appears to be slightly vanilla or trying to be all things to all people, they doubt National's commitment to actually fighting woke.
Well, that's why I started writing my newsletter. I write a newsletter every week. I got so frustrated by my constituents coming to me and saying, what's the National Party think about this? Well, I can't speak for the National Party on every issue, so just the issue with the Law Society, of course, comes under justice, and that's Paul Goldsmith's area. But I can have my own opinion, and I do, and that's why I write my newsletter and I get it out, because we don't have enough media organisations like the platform that are prepared to actually be independent, and that's really important. And I think it's something that we've lost with our
Stuart, I don't
media.
want to get you in trouble, but you're telling me that you too are frustrated that the National Party has a perception that we don't know quite what it stands for.
No, I don't. No, that's not the case at all.
But hang on, you've got people coming to you saying, what does the National Party stand for? Where do you stand on this?
That's because we could not get our media, the media, to put our messages out.
Well, geez, I've been trying to get an interview with Luxon for months. We've finally got one on the 28th of next month, but he's reluctant to come on here, Stuart.
Well, it's quite painless. I think he should come.
Yeah, well, tell Hamish Rutherford that. No, Hamish and I have had a chat. He is coming on. But apparently I've got baggage, Stuart.
Well, I think everyone's got baggage, Sean. And if you say you haven't, you're either the second coming of Jesus or you're lying.
Yeah, okay. Now, Stuart, what did the Law Society say to you after you wrote your newsletter? Did they come back and tell you off? Were they outraged? Did they try and take you to court?
They didn't come to me. I went round about it through a third party.
Who was the third party?
Yeah. Hamish Rutherford.
Oh, so they went to your media guy. What a bunch of crawlers. Oh, sorry. So they went to Hamish Rutherford and said, the National Party's saying nasty things about them. Tell that Stuart Smith to stop.
Well, yes, Hamish was doing his job. He passed it on, and he's a good guy. But Liam Kernaghan went to
Liam Kennigan, who wouldn't front on his own policy, wouldn't come on. It's still an open invite for him to come on the platform and talk about it. So, Stuart, if you were going to deliver a message back to, and let's not go through Hamish Rutherford, let's just call them out today. And I'm sure they're listening, Liam, I'm sure you're listening. What do you want to say to the Law Society?
Oh, I just think they need to front up to their members, actually, because their members are a number of quite senior legal professionals have been in touch with me over this last week and been very supportive, actually, of what I'd said. And I know you had KC on your program.
And we had Judith Collins on talking to this yesterday. We've been all over it like a rash, mate. And also Ron Patterson, who was the chair of the group that wrote the so-called independent group that wrote were commissioned to write the report by the Law Society. Stuart, how's the wine looking this year?
Fantastic, actually. It looked like it was going to be a terrible vintage, but it turned out to be great. That's in Marlborough, of course, and obviously the people in Gisborne and Hawke's Bay had a terrible time, and we feel for them. But very good. Everyone's very happy, and it's a good amount of a good yield as well, so that be able to fill that pipeline right back up and supply to those markets overseas and grow the wonderful New Zealand brand around the world.
All right, and I take it you're going to keep writing newsletters that say what you think?
Yes, one coming out today, but it's on a much more mundane thing, the giddy funding of the arc furnace at New Zealand Steel.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much indeed, Stuart. Cheers. What month is it today? It's May. Okay, so yes, it is. No, it's not May. Is it June? It's June. 28th of this month, I think Larkson's coming on, Hugh. As far as I know, we've been rather busy. Sean, yes, we all know national MPs have personal opinions. What we want to know is what will the party do? Totally different thing. Look, I'm interesting. I think Stuart Smith hinted at a frustration that people who might want to vote National have is, what the hell do you stand for? What the hell do you stand for? And I think very telling what he said about what constituents and others were coming to him. Oh, it's Kieran McNulty as the Minister of Internal Affairs, who's become the new fix-it Chippy. Now that Chippy's moved up to the big house, up to the 9th floor, Kieran McNulty is now the Chippy in waiting, isn't he? And what is he? He's an old bookie. Kieran McNulty, an old bookie. He also, and don't forget this about Kieran McNulty, he believes the treaty overrides democracy in New Zealand. Yes, he has said, well, there's a new type of democracy with the treaty, which isn't necessarily equal rights for all. Sean, this is my first taste of Stuart Smith. Never heard him talk before. I've got to say, he sounds like a real GC. Says Ash, I think we all know what GC means, and I'm not going to spell it out for you.